morning and welcome to Renewal Assembly 6. Today we're going to focus on how each of us finds and shares our own story, how it frees us, how it empowers us, and how it witnesses to Jesus. I'm going to be talking this morning with someone you know well, Mr. Charlie Barbeau, who is our development director and who is the leader of our New Hope effort. But I've asked Charlie for a different reason. I've asked Charlie to come and share a bit of his story of finding himself as a Christian and as a Christian witness. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Bishop.
You were raised in an interesting place, weren't you?
Well, yes. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, my mom and dad were a mixed couple. He came from an evangelical family, and my mom was a Roman Catholic. And so they found the Episcopal Church as middle ground. And I grew up in Provo, Utah, which is the closest we probably have to a theocracy in the United States. And it was a different place. Being an Episcopalian, there was one other Episcopalian in my high school. And I went on to go to Brigham Young for a year. And I was taught to have faith at a young age, and I never questioned, my Christian faith, that there was Jesus. I never questioned the Episcopal Church. I loved the Episcopal Church of the 60s. I mean, it was just a place I thrived in. And being in Utah and being a minority, there were goods and bads with that. The positives is that there was prayer in school. I enjoyed that, but they never asked me to lead a prayer. I enjoyed the fact that everybody was a brother and a sister, and that God was very much in the forefront of how people related to one another. The things I didn't enjoy was the religious discrimination, of which, being Episcopalian, I was not part of the majority. And it made me learn more about my faith. I read the Bible from cover to cover when I was 16. I didn't read it the way you suggest. I just started at the beginning and finished at the end. And Revelations was very interesting. So, that was my basic faith as a young adult. I was faithful. I had a good upbringing in the church. And I just didn't question. When I prayed, it seemed that God answered. And I was blessed to be in a good family in a sound environment. I went away to college and I fell away from the church. I understand that's common. And with the birth of my son, it was time to get rooted in the faith again. And that's really where my adult formation started. And we chose the Church of the Mediator. Being Episcopalian, we had the luxury of having several churches in the valley that were close that we could choose from. And we seemed to fit with that parish and Father Birdsey, who was there at the time.
So how did your personal spirituality grow when you came back to the church?
That's a great question, because my faith was really immature when I came back to the church.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to Father Birdsey, and I wanted to financially support the church, and I said, well, how would it be if I gave $1,000 to support the church? And he said, well, that would be very nice. And he slowly began a stewardship conversation with me that really changed my life and probably brought me to this chair today.
Mm-hmm. So what changed inside you as you began to handle your money differently?
Well, in reading the Gospels, I felt a real disconnect between what Jesus said about how we manage our money and how we treat others, and what had been the focus of my life up to that point. My goal had been to leave this welfare state for my children and my children's children so they'd never have to work. I was trying to amass wealth, not so I could live a grandiose lifestyle, but so that my family would be taken care of. And I felt a great disconnect with the Gospels. And so it was through stewardship and working with stewardship that I was able to resolve those issues.
So who did Jesus become for you as you wrestled with him?
Well, at the beginning, Jesus was a person with a set of values I just couldn't attain. And so I said, well, I'm going to do this incremental giving where I give another 0.5% a year. I mean, talk about a poor way to back into spirituality. And I was asked to be the stewardship chair, and I wasn't equipped. And I called Diocesan House, and within 2 days I was having lunch with the Archdeacon and our stewardship chair, who opened this door to stewardship as the Episcopal Church teaches it. And I thought, these people are crazy. They can't be sane.
So Jesus is still weird at this point.
Jesus is somebody I love and who I talk to, but I feel completely unworthy to be a disciple because I can't cross this gap with money.
So the first transition was from seeing him as alien with these nutty ideas to seeing him as somebody you couldn't reach but who was probably right.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary.
Okay. So what got you closer to Jesus?
Well, what got me closer to Jesus was hanging out with Jesus' people and beginning to learn more about stewardship the way the church taught it, because I found that I have to walk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be, and I was a stewardship chair at Church of the Mediator for a couple of years, and I couldn't say these things unless I believed them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to find ways to believe them. I felt a growing discomfort with my inability to tithe. And the diocese brought the St. Matthew's Committee and planned giving to the forefront. And you began to look for people to help. And Shar Horst invited me to go to an Episcopal Church Foundation seminar in Alexandria. And I went to this 3-day seminar and listened to the craziest stewards in the world. But I'm understanding the talk now. I can't quite wear their clothes, but I'm understanding the talk. And I had a 20-minute walk from the hotel to the meeting center with the nicest guy in the world who was talking stewardship. We were both about 5 minutes late, and it was explaining it to me in a way that really made sense. And we shook hands, and we introduced ourselves when we got there. I sat down. He walked up on the stage. It was Bishop Burrell, and he went on to lead the greatest 2-hour talk on stewardship I may ever have heard.
Wow. I'm curious, Charlie, as you were growing as a follower of Jesus, how did your prayer life change?
Well, that's a great question, Bishop. I mean, I was really immature as a Christian when I came back to the church. And I knew the prayers in the prayer book that we commonly say, the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed. But my prayer life wasn't very good, and it was just by hanging out with other and associating with other people that my prayer life started to grow. But what really changed my prayer life was 2 years ago, I started to say the daily office every morning. At the same time, I've got a spiritual director who's trained by Jesuits, who's coaching me on how to pray. And just the process of the office. At first, it was something I knew I had to do.
So if I've heard you so far, spiritual maturity doesn't just happen. There's a kind of struggle in it. There's a journey in it, and it takes a little bit of effort.
And it takes patience. And I'm not the most patient person in the world.
I know no such thing.